Okay, so recently, Riot Games was accused of basing their newest League of Legends character, Seraphine, off of a real-life woman without her consent. We're talking hair, facial features, hobbies, the whole deal. And what's craziest is this isn't even the first time they've been accused of this. Alright guys, we're on the road to 2 million subscribers. I want you to pause the video, hit pause, scroll down, and hit that subscribe button. Let's hit this milestone together. Now, on November 12th, a Twitter user named Stephanie posted a Twitter thread and a much longer Medium article titled, "The Problem with Seraphine." It turns out, the problem was that she thinks Seraphine is her. In the article, she makes the claim that Riot's newest champion is based off of her and her life. The author, whose real name is Stephanie, claims that she had a relationship with an anonymous Riot Games employee back in 2019. And that relationship, in conjunction with a list of alleged similarities between Seraphine and her, has her feeling pretty uncomfortable. So how we're going to start this story is by talking about all of the things she says are similar between her and Seraphine. First is the obvious one. Stephanie and Seraphine look pretty similar. They're both young women, have very similar hair colors, similar glasses, and share similar facial features. Alright, if I stopped here, you might say to yourself, well, they look similar, but what's the big deal? Well, here's where her allegations get a little stronger. With the release of Seraphine, Riot Games has rolled out a pretty extensive social media campaign, complete with a Twitter account that personifies the character. And it's on those pages where a lot of the photos comparing Seraphine and Stephanie, the way they look, the way they pose, have come from. Stephanie and Seraphine both draw as a hobby, and Stephanie even says that Seraphine's drawings look like hers. Riot also announced on Twitter that Seraphine was joining their virtual pop group KDA on Stephanie's birthday. And lastly, we have what I think might be the strongest part of her allegations. Screenshots from the relationship she had with that Riot employee back in 2019. In the Medium article, she includes a screenshot from text messaging conversations with that person, who she refers to as John, where he suggests making a Ari skin based off of her. And then as she's discussing those messages, she also refers to another time where he suggested she fly to Los Angeles to do voice acting for a top secret project. So all things considered, there's a lot going into her claim here. Not just the fact that they look similar. Now, one piece of evidence to the contrary of Stephanie's claims is that Jivan Sidhu, a senior game designer at Riot, posted a tweet on October 29th saying that Seraphine was actually based off of Riot whiskeys. And then on November 12th, Riot Games officially responded to her claims. They sent a statement to Tim Rizzo, a reporter for InVen Global, denying that Seraphine was based off Stephanie. Here's what it says. Quote, Seraphine was independently created by Riot Games and was not based on any individual, including Miss Doris. Additionally, the former employee Miss Doris is referring to left Riot more than a year ago and was in a department and role that has no input whatsoever into the creative design process. We take all claims of misappropriation seriously and immediately investigated Miss Doris's allegations after receiving a legal demand letter from her attorney last month. We confirmed that her claim of being the basis for Seraphine lacks merit, communicated this to her attorney, and invited him to further discuss the facts with us. We are still waiting for a response. End quote. Now, the majority of this is exactly what you'd expect from this kind of statement. But it's important not to gloss over the fact that Riot says that they did receive a legal demand letter from Stephanie's lawyer. And that's where this story gets a little more interesting, because this is not the first time that Riot Games have been accused of this. It's not even the second time. Now, the first of those two additional accusations was made on Twitter and nothing really came of it. But the second was actually settled in court. On August 14th, 2017, it was made public that Riot Games lost a lawsuit to former soccer player Edgar Davids due to his resemblance to the Striker Lucian skin. In that case, the judge ruled that Riot Games would have to reveal how much money they made off of the Striker Lucian skin, and then allow auditors to decide how much money Davids would get. Now, since Stephanie's lawyer did send a letter to Riot, and with the precedent of the Striker Lucian situation, I decided to speak to a lawyer myself to get some perspective on the legal side of the story. Josh Marcus, an esports lawyer from here in Toronto, sat down with me to shed some of his light on the situation. Now, before I get into that, it's important to note that this isn't actual legal advice. It's just his opinion as a lawyer. He told me that when the news dropped, he was definitely interested in how it played out. And when I asked him if Stephanie would have a case, he mostly just said it depends on a lot of factors.
Broadly speaking, when you're a celebrity, you're going to value exposure. When you're a non-celebrity, you are going to value privacy, right? And that is just a broad assertion that, of course, isn't going to apply always. But when courts are looking at it, it's, if you are Michael Jordan, you have more of A, an interest in gaining exposure, but B, you have more of a commercial interest that you have to protect.
He did say that when it comes to a situation like Stephanie's, her argument gets a lot stronger with every hyper-personalized piece of evidence that she has. It's one thing for someone to look like a character, but if they share a personality type, hobbies, distinguishing characteristics like tattoos, then that becomes a lot stronger argument.
If it was just another redhead with glasses, right, you might end up on one end of that spectrum. If you go into, I believe in that thread, they talk about kind of the lore behind the character and the stories that come along with it. If that is genuinely based on this person's life story or life experiences such that she could be identified from it, you're on the other end of that spectrum.
Another point that I thought was interesting when we're talking about this situation that Josh brought up is the level of fame of the person making these accusations. When it comes to situations like this, it's a lot easier for someone who's famous to claim damages for using their likeness, because everybody knows what they look like.
But the flip side of that is, the creative process where you're basing characters or any traits off of a generic type of person gets a little more complicated because, again, you're not talking about Gwen Stefani and No Doubt here where there is a very clear benefit to using that likeness. Here it's, they have red hair, they wear glasses, maybe some of the lore is based off of their character, but there's no, the average Joe who doesn't know Stephanie doesn't care about that, right? They are not choosing to play as this character because it is based off Steph.
Now, before I ended my conversation with Josh, I asked him about that former soccer player, Edgar Davids, and whether or not a case like this having precedent would have any impact on potential legal proceedings.
Assuming they didn't settle and it was actually found in his favor, right? So a court has ruled that, yes, you violated his rights by doing this, and you have some precedential value there, and you can point to that pattern of behavior that, hey, Riot has a history of basing their characters off of real people. So the fact that this woman who dated, the artist or whoever it was who came up with it is making this claim really isn't that outlandish, right? It's not so crazy to imagine because, hey, they've done it before.
Now, it's important to note that we don't know yet if this case will ever end up in a courtroom. Stephanie and her lawyer have only sent a legal letter to Riot Games, but I figured given the nature of the situation, some extra legal perspective might be helpful. This situation is strange, complicated, and it's made a lot of headlines since it first popped up on Twitter. And I mean, it's esports Twitter. Everybody loves to shit on game developers. But this situation is unique and murky in a way that we don't see as often. Especially because, despite what you may have seen on Reddit, the situation is not as simple as Stephanie saying that Seraphine just looks like her.
Kind of looks like you're trying to figure out the gender of your child, but
Gender reveal lights, yeah. Yeah. You could go full gender reveal.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay. That's cool.
You can sync it to your music, which is cool.
That's fucking sick.
You can just go off in here, have a party. It's quarantine, man. You gotta entertain yourself somehow. One of the weirdest things is you can sync them to just audio, just like whatever your desktop audio is.
Yeah.
So if you were raging, I could sync the lights to your rage.
Oh, so they would it would flash brightly
every
or
time you
something.
freak out, you just get rage.
I like that. I need me some lights for that exact reason.
Dude, they're sick, man. It's fun.
Yeah. All right.
Gamer lights, man. That's the future.